so much industry here. Everything from steel, automotive. There's a Marathon refinery. And I just started smelling sulfur in the air. So even the air is filled with industry.
In 800 feet, your destination will be on the right.
Right up here at this bridge. This is where it went down.
In the 1920s, Detroit was one of the most prosperous cities in the United States, built on the U.S. auto industry. The roaring 1920s led to great income inequality between owners and workers. Henry Ford, owner of the Ford River Rouge plant, had become one of the richest men in the world. Yet he refused to recognize labor unions that were demanding a greater share of the profits created from their work. To prevent union activity, Ford hired Harry Bennett to head his private police known as the Service Department. Bennett employed various intimidation tactics to stop union organizing, including violence against Ford workers. On October 29, 1929, the stock market crashed, leading to the Great Depression. By 1932, automobile production plummeted 75% and unemployment was rampant. A wave of bank closures took the life savings of many unemployed workers and retirees, as every neighborhood bank in Detroit went out of business. This was before the federal government provided unemployment insurance and Social Security. Detroit's unemployed councils organized a hunger march from Detroit to Ford's River Rouge industrial complex in Dearborn. The marchers intended to present 14 demands to Henry Ford, including rehiring unemployed Ford workers, funding health care, ending racial discrimination in hiring and promotions, providing winter fuel for the unemployed, abolishing the use of company spies and private police against workers, and accepting workers' rights to organize unions. March 7, 1932 was a bitterly cold day. Marchers carried banners reading, "Give us work. We want bread, not crumbs. Tax the rich and feed the poor." As a group of over 3,000 unemployed workers approached the 4th Street Bridge at the Detroit city limit, the Dearborn police attempted to stop the march by firing tear gas into the crowd as they began hitting marchers with clubs. The unarmed crowd scattered into a field covered with stones, picked them up, and began throwing rocks at the police. The marchers regrouped and advanced nearly a mile toward the plant. Harry Bennett, head of Ford Security, drove up in a car, opened a window, and fired a pistol into the crowd. His car was pelted with rocks, and Bennett was injured. Dearborn police and Ford security men opened fire with machine guns on the retreating marchers. 4 marchers were killed, and a 5th man later died of his wounds. Over 60 marchers were wounded. In the aftermath, a government inquiry was held, but no one was ever charged in the killings. 5 days later, on March 12, 1932, an estimated 60,000 people attended a mass funeral procession down Woodward Avenue in Detroit for the men killed in the Ford Hunger March, where Joe Bussell, Joe York, Coleman Lenny, and Joe de Blasio were buried within sight of Ford's River Rouge industrial complex. A 5th man, Curtis Williams, died on August 7th from injuries sustained during the attack. 9 years later, on April 11th, 1941, Ford workers conducted a 10-day sit-down strike. Henry Ford reluctantly signed a collective bargaining agreement recognizing the United Auto Workers Union. So as I left the 4th Street Bridge, I drove around the corner to Woodmere Cemetery to pay my respect to these men who gave their lives for the cause of labor and greater freedom for us all. I had read somewhere that the graves were prominently displayed toward the back of the cemetery, yet after driving around the graveyard, I couldn't find the markers. I visited the Woodmere office at the gates, and a couple ladies asked for the names of the fallen men. They had never heard of them. After 20 minutes of researching their archives, they identified the location and provided a map. When I arrived, I found the graves unkempt with no historical markers celebrating the workers who marched and were killed in one of the bloodiest labor events in U.S. history. As I brushed off the graves, I tried to imagine what that day was like, their last day on Earth. We must remember our history and the struggle of those who came before us, whose sacrifices have given us so much. We can no longer take for granted what we have, because our long slumber has led to numerous losses of our labor rights. It is time to reawaken the union of workers and reassert our rights over our labor, so that future generations receive even more than what we have been given.